This is a walkthrough for creating an e-learning storyboard. You've finished your content. The content's been approved by stakeholders. It's been reviewed and edited by subject matter experts and by people on your team. So you're ready to start creating the materials that you will use for delivering the training. If you were developing an instructor-led training, this is where you would start building your instructor guide. Like I said, there are two paths at this point once your content is finished. Instructor-led training, you go into an instructor guide. With e-learning, you go into creating a storyboard. Now I have two different types of templates for a storyboard. I have one that's in Adobe InDesign and I have one that's in a PowerPoint form. This walkthrough is for the PowerPoint version of the storyboard template. Now, one thing to note when you're creating a storyboard is I've seen a lot of people create storyboards with so much detail and so many graphics that they might as well have just created the e-learning product in itself. The storyboard should be a very quick overview of what the e-learning will look like, its organization, and what your intentions are for each screen or slide, depending on which kind of software you're using. When you're creating a storyboard, you're creating another step of approval and verification of your delivery of the training. So we're going to start with content that's already been created. We've already talked about how to build an outline. We've already talked about creating the content. For an e-learning, the content is almost exactly what your voiceover will be. Now, we haven't gone into slide design yet, where we talk about best practices for slide design, but we will discuss that. But for now, we're going to consider all the content is what is going to be said by someone doing a voiceover. To start, let's take a look at what the template looks like. I have 4 sections developed. We're looking at the slide view of a PowerPoint, which means that this is where you're going to be building everything. Screen location is where this specific screen or slide is going to be in the e-learning presentation. If you have multiple sections, if you have multiple orders, this is where you get to determine so that people can keep track of the order or where they are in the e-learning. The next section is voiceover. This is where you're going to put in the content that you want somebody to read or say during the slide. Now, here's a spoiler alert. Do not read the text that's on your slide. If you have too much text on the slide, people are going to be busy reading it as opposed to listening to it and forming their own connection with the material. We'll cover that more when we get into slide design. The next section are screen actions. Now, I typically only put in here the screen actions that are not involved with navigation or a menu or something that's going to be on every single slide or screen. I only put in the screen actions of the stuff that's specific to this screen. For instance, if you're going to have buttons, if you're going to have some kind of interactions, as much as I hate them, click the reveals. If you're going to have those in here, you'll list all the different screen actions. If it's just an imported animation or video, you put that screen action in here. Finally, you have your 4th section, which is where you're going to lay out what the slide or screen is going to look like in every aspect of this e-learning. Now, there's 2 ways of doing this. The painful way is to draw out what you want your e-learning to look like across every slide and screen, and then copying and pasting it or duplicating this thing. There's a much easier way. The easier way is by going to View, going to Slide Master, and then building your overall e-learning design here. For instance, if we wanted to have our e-learning style guide start with a blue box, all we would have to do is add Insert, Shapes, Draw Box, and then we're going to shade fill it with a nice dark blue, and we're going to get rid of the outline, but you need to have space where they're going to be able to see the stuff that's going to be in there. So we're going to insert another shape, another square. This one is going to be the white. This is going to be the area where all the action takes place. Okay, so we're going to give that a white background, and then we'll give that, make sure that there's no outline again. If you're going to have navigation buttons, shapes, little circle, zoom in, and you don't have to be specific in these. You can just provide the basic idea of where it's going to go. So we put in our next button. Want to make that obvious that you can see it. Again, make sure that there's no outline. Copy and paste that. There's our back button. You get the idea. You're also going to want to have a title in here. So let's add a text box. Text box is going to be name of this e-learning. Let's go ahead and format that. I'm going to make it semi-bold, and we got to be able to see it, so it's going to be white. And we can just position this box where we want it. So now, when we're done designing what the slide and what the screen is going to look like for every slide, we can go to Slide Master, click on Close Master, and now you can add stuff without having to worry about accidentally moving stuff. It also makes it easier as you're making new slides. You go up to the New Style, click it, and you can see here you have a brand new one. So once you get your initial design set up, now you can put in things like, if you know you're going to have a specific picture, just put text box and say image of child, something like that. Don't spend a lot of time building your e-learning in PowerPoint. This is just to give stakeholders and subject matter experts and team members something to look at, something to approve, something to scrutinize, and have commentary. Once it's approved, we'll get to where we're going to create the actual e-learning product. And we'll talk about that more later.